Welcome to the People's Guild with me, Wasco, and my co-host, B Jangles.
We're a couple of Splinterlanders that love exploring all things Pretoria with a wide variety of guests from all across the community and Splinterlands universe.
Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show.
Welcome back to the People's Guild. Another week, another episode, another wonderful guest. Today, we are graced with the presence of a very special guest. He is a dreamer of dreams. He's the king of creative over at our Splinterlands. And we've been trying very hard to bring this guy to the People's Guild for quite some time. And we're very appreciative that we could finally make it happen. So welcome to the show, Nate. Thank you for stopping by.
Howdy. And thanks for having me.
So I'm kind of like a big believer of like where, you know, people grow up, they kind of really make the person. Like I'm from the UK, Stockport. So like there's that saying like you can take the boy out of Stockport, but you can't take Stockport out of the boy. So like I was just interested, like where were you born and like what was it like for you growing up as a kid?
Wow, we're really starting from the beginning. How long is this podcast? We're gonna start. I was born. I was born in Portland, Oregon. I don't remember much of it other than some snow. Most of my life I grew up in California, though, over in the Bay Area.
Nice. And what was it kind of like what memories have you got of that time? Like have you got like memories that stand out? Like we were talking like off air, me and Ben, about the things we used to kind of get up to as a kids, like when we finished school, like we just tend to just kind of just put our bags down and then straight back out again. Like what was it like for you at that time?
I was definitely a child of the 80s. So all those, you know, I know I'm showing my age here, but all those Steven Spielberg movies. I mean, that was, you know, you watch the Goonies or you watch, you know, nowadays it'd be Stranger Things, right? And you see all these kids run off outside, go out on their bikes and just go. And it's like, it's funny because nowadays I don't see that happen that often. You know, I remember as a kid, me and my friends, we just, you know, not drive, but we'd ride for miles, just go off. And our parents are like, yeah, see ya. You know, be home before dark. Hopefully they don't die or get kidnapped or whatever. We, you know, and you know, or hop on the bus and just ride it across town. Like I don't see that happening a lot with kids nowadays. But that was essentially, you know, in a world without internet and YouTube and Xbox and PlayStation, all the rest. That was our game. Just going outside, just finding stuff to do. So with that in mind, I mean, I would say that that was my childhood. So I'm very much a son of the Spielberg era. My sense of imagination, or you know, what caused me to be, you know, have that creative drive to begin with. I'm trying to remember as a kid. I remember starting off drawing Garfield. Back then when newspapers were a thing and they had the funny papers and things like that. I would draw Garfield quite a bit. And I started reading at I don't know, maybe not a young age, but I remember around 6th grade is when I really developed a thirst for books and reading, starting off with the Chronicles of Narnia, jumping over to Lord of the Rings. And then after that, I was hooked, man. I was like, I just read anything I could get my hands on. You know, going up and down the street on the weekends for the garage sales. Do you have any books? Oh, you do? Buy them for $0.25, you know, and I'd read all those. I remember going to flea markets, just wherever I could get books, my hands on some books. I was well known for being the kid who didn't know where he lived, because when mom and dad would get me in the car, I was not looking out the window. I would not leave the house without a book in hand. And I would be like flipping those pages. And like when the car stopped and they said, get out, I'd be like, oh, we're somewhere new. How we got there, I had no idea. And how to get back home again, no idea. But I knew my way around Middle Earth. I knew my way around these worlds, right? And eventually that kind of morphed into comic books, and that became a whole new medium of exploration. Now, it took my younger years, my drawing years, And then it took my reading years and it mashed them together. And suddenly there was like, whoa, it opened up the world where I can have my cake and eat it too. I can read and look at cool stuff at the same time. Are you kidding me? And so, fast forward to now, and you have the comics are alive on the big screen. You got the MCU, you got all this CGI, you got all this crazy stuff happening. When I watched Lord of the Rings on the big screen, now when I watch the MCU and all this other stuff, I'm like, holy cow. It's like, it's just absolutely mind-blowing. It's amazing. Like, I'm like a kid again. In fact, I very much look in the mirror and I think, that's not you. Like, I truly feel like I'm just a kid having fun. So having the opportunity to be VP of Creative for a game like Splinterlands or a company like Splinterlands and being able to do what I do for a living, it really does feel like I never grew up. So I don't know whether you intended to just open that can of worms with where were you born, Nate? But good question. Good question. It really just morphed into like blah, me vomiting all that all over your guys' ears. But yeah, there you go.
Well, thank you for the vomit, Nate. Yeah, that opening that can of worms was absolutely intentional, and it's funny that you mentioned the Goonies. Kieran and I and a couple of other folks within the guild, we've got kind of a running joke that Gorth, the Gladius epic fire card, was surely inspired by Sloth. Can you either confirm or deny that one?
That is, I don't think that was intended, but I will check with the artist after this and I'll say, hey, were you, baby Ruth, is that were you channeling, hey, you guys, is that what you were doing? Like, so that would be cool if it was. I'll have to ask about that.
Well, it definitely looks like, I don't know if you could see it, but I see it very clearly and I can hear him yelling that signature line from the Goonies. Yeah, we've got kind of a running joke is, whenever you're opening up a Gladius pack, most folks are looking for Cora. So as soon as you see that purple, that excitement comes, you flip it over and, it's Gorth. You've officially been Gorthed. You got Gorthed.
He looks cool though. Like,
he does look cool. Yeah, so I'm curious, Nate. I love the creative journey. Was this something that you pursued through your higher studies as well? Did you pursue creative endeavors throughout university and beyond, or was this kind of?
That's an interesting question. So I don't know. It's kind of like as I grew up, I wanted to be many things. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be a comic book artist. I wanted to be I don't know, a lot of different things. As I got older in high school, I contemplated, heck, I wanted to be, I was reading a lot of Tom Clancy at the time. So of course I wanted to be a CIA analyst, like freaking Jack Ryan or whatever. And then, I think once I got into college, I was like, at the time, and again, I'm showing my age, the possible degrees that you could get just didn't align with anything that I felt passionate about. I ended up doing poli-sci, and eventually I just kind of like walked away from college because there was nothing that spoke to me at the time. The colleges were just getting some Apple computers, but if you remember back in the day, Apple computers weren't capable of too much, not like computers are today. So the idea of, graphic design and things a lot of that nature were not what they are today, digital graphic design or digital, creativity and all the 3D stuff and all the cool stuff that we're capable of doing today with animation and everything else. It wasn't the same. That path wasn't available the first time I went to college. Eventually I did went back to college and maybe I was born slightly too early, but that's okay because eventually modern world caught up to things and they started offering things that I was like, oh, now that I can get passionate about. So I back to college and, when Adobe was more of a thing. So, but yeah, that was fun.
Well, you said like how you kind of started to learn how to draw. Like you started to learn Garfield, which I've got a fondness for Garfield as well because when I used to do I was a paper boy, and one of my morning rituals in the morning was to read like on the Daily Mail. It was always on the back, right at the bottom. So that was I spent many a morning just reading through the Garfields, and like you said, I remember in this interview as well. You said how like if anyone wants to draw, a great point to start off is drawing Garfield. But I'm just interested because my boy's really bang into art at the moment. Like he's currently just drawing. We're making a board game. I've got like a private little school, and we're making their own board game. And he's drawing Tiamat. I think he's got like six heads, right? So he's bang into that. And I was just interested, like, what would you like in this current climate, in this our day and age, for someone who really wants to get into art? Would you recommend them to go to university or to college? Like, do you think it's necessary, or do you think it's like there's other avenues now open?
Oh man. That's a tough one because I have to step back and think, okay, what do I look like when I interview someone? But also, what would I tell my kids?
Mm.
So knowing that my kids might be listening to this at some point, I don't want to be the one to say, yeah, you don't need to go to college. I will say, I will say that when I interview, the first thing I look at is not the resume. I do not look at, where did you work? What did you do? What university did you go to? What's your degree? I don't care. I mean, I do care a little bit. I mean, if I'm looking at equally viable candidates, then something has to edge you out. Something has to, give you the win. So eventually I start looking at the granular level and look like, okay, but the first thing I look like is the portfolio. Every single time. If you're applying on the creative side of things, then I want to know what you can do. And that speaks way louder than what you claim that your experience was or what you could do on paper. Now that's to be a producer, I guess is the best term for it. If you're looking at some sort of management level, like you want to be a lead or supervisor, director, or something of that nature, then yeah. I mean, I'm going to need to know, we're going to have to dig a little deeper than just your portfolio. You have to have some pretty strong people skills and be able to inspire and lead from the front. I'm not a big fan of whipping from behind. That's just, like I tell all my leads that you are not in supervisor mode. You are in mentorship mode. You are in oh my gosh. I am right now watching my dog leap up to grab some chicken wings. He didn't get them though. Okay. So so the point is like, yeah, if you I expect people to inspire, to mentor, and to say, hey, look at what I'm doing. Do what I'm doing, not do what I say, and then go. Like, I recommend that's what I expect from my leads. And what's great is they do awesome at it. Every single one of them. On the creative side, I don't think that a lot of the creative team gets as much credit as they deserve every single day. These people are the most passionate, most talented group of people that I have ever come across. 1% of that is me being so freaking picky. If you're hired by me, that's because you bring the goods. Like you are in the top fraction of a 1% of all the creatives I've ever met, and you deserve that spot. I do not. You could be the nicest person ever, but if you can't bring your A game and really perform, then it's like sorry. So I am extremely picky with who I bring on the team. But once they're on the team, I have to say that that they've almost all just blown me away. Just rock stars.
Well, that's good to hear because from players like ourselves, it's great that you are happy with them. So, like, but have you got really good at deciding who is going to be that right fit. Like when you were interviewing, because I can imagine now it's like we're talking now, right? Like online via Zoom. So is that something you have got better at over the years? Like, finding out who can be that right fit, or is there still like that easing in time?
No, I mean, typically we have a trial period, or maybe not a trial period, but it's essentially, hey, let's take the next 30-90 days and make sure it's a good fit for both parties. So it's a good fit for you, it's a good fit for me, a good fit for the company. Let's see how it goes. And then after that period of time, then we reconnect and we say, hey, was it a good fit for you? Was it good for me? And if we both agree that this is great, then we keep on going. So from that respect, opportunity for both sides to make sure that we're the right culture for them, that they like us, and then that I like how they perform and like what they bring to the table. So I'm very fortunate. I'm very blessed that most of the time it works out pretty well.
You just touched on something, Nate, that really strikes home with me. And we had we were fortunate enough to sit down with Agrode just prior to Splinterfest. So I guess about 6 months ago. And he really harped on around his belief in servant leadership and leading from the front and, leading by example. And that's something I back in when I was living in the States, I was fortunate to work for a boss that very firmly believed in servant leadership as well. And, I know the power that and the confidence that instills naturally into employees that are working for you and looking up to you. How was it that, so it's my understanding that you've been with the company for a good number of years now. You've pretty much started with Aggie and Matt way back when. Can you tell us a little bit about what were those initial conversations like? Officially, how long have you been with the company, and what has this roller coaster ride of Splinterlands been like, kind of looking back on things? And are we at a place where you thought we would ever be, or have we exceeded that? What, I know that's a big question, so feel free to break it down and pick the easy wins there.
No, I'm trying to let's see, let's unpackage what you asked. So first of all, I guess we're going on what it's been around 5 years, I think. So I came on board before the game was launched. So I had very small interactions with both Agrode and Matt before the game idea, the concept was launched, and they said, let's do this. I had essentially been trying to get my feet wet on at the time it was Steam that turned into Hive. And I was having fun. It was just a new toy to play with. I was just barely getting into, at the beginning of 2018, I was just discovering crypto and blockchain. And to me, it was ooh, look at all these toys to play with. So of course, I gravitated oh, there's a social media platform that's blockchain based. Let's check that out. And then pretty soon one thing led to another. And I would, maybe go to a meetup, or I would go just socialize with these new online friends. And eventually one introduced me to Matt as someone who can help him with some other stuff that he was working on for Steam. And when they had the idea of hey, let's make a game, I was very fortunate that they approached me and says, hey, you want in on this? You want to get involved? We could really use some creative skills to help us launch this idea we have. And at the time, they, Agrod had some old artwork sitting on a shelf already, and I was all right, yeah, we'll use that. And then they were very specific on what they needed from me. Well, can you make this card frame, or can you do this, or can you do that? And it was very specific tasks that they asked of me, and I was yeah, no problem, let's do it. And so I'd give it my all, I'd give it to them, and it's oh yeah, that's even better than I was expected, great. And then they would give me another task, and then one task at a time. Eventually, after we launched the game and things took off, they I felt really good about it. I think they felt good about the relationship as well, because they less and less they gave me specifics, and more they trusted, me to just give me an idea instead of every little detail of what it is that they wanted. And the more I did that, the more I felt like they were like, oh, well, great, Nate has a handle on that. We could focus more on, well, at the time Aggie was more focused on, we had an interesting dynamic. Aggie was very much the marketing, the pitch guy, the guy who to sell it to the entire blockchain, the Steam or Hive or the crypto industry in general. And Matt was there doing all the coding, and I was there trying to do the graphics and the animations and the narrative and all the other stuff in between. And somehow that mix, that magical formula where we each brought to the table slightly different proficiencies and talents and skills, it just really worked out really well. It went really well.
So what was it initially about them that persuaded you to jump into this project? And like how long was it once it began that you thought, oh yeah, this is something now?
It
Something
helps
special.
that they're really good guys. I mean, I believe you've talked to both of them. You've seen them on town halls. I think that anyone who meets those two gentlemen, I think one of the first impressions you get is how down to earth they are. That no matter how successful things get or how successful they are as individuals, no matter what they've accomplished, there's like zero ego. Like neither one of them, you feel like they are looking down at you. They're very much right there on the level, and I think that speaks volumes for their overall just who they are. You can't help but admire that modesty, that humbleness, and that just that salt of the earth type mentality. So I think that that's one of the things I really appreciated about both of them. But I'll be honest, when all they had to do was say the words blockchain fantasy card game, I'm like, I'm a total geek. like you really, they could have been horrible people and they could have said these magic words to me and I'd be like, well, yeah, let's do it. So the fact that they were great people and they wanted to do something that was appealing to me as a big major fantasy sci-fi geeky nerd of a just fanboy, it was like, well, of course, like I didn't have
twist my arm.
Yeah, I didn't have to give it a moment's thought. I was like, well, of course, yeah, let's do it, let's go. So yeah, that's how that went.
Awesome, man. Well, again, and I wanted to mention this a minute ago, but you always seem to work in praise for the creative team that you've surrounded yourself with. One of my personal favorite segments of the show of weekly town halls is eye candy with Nate time. The candy man comes around and you drop the goods, but you always deliver those with praise for the team that you've managed to surround yourself with. So, I think I speak on behalf of the whole of the community in saying, thank you to Agro and Matt for giving you that longer and longer leash as time went on, and eventually just snipping the leash and letting you run wild with your imagination, man. And hearing you, I introduced you as the dreamer of dreams. And when I hear you speak about where you think that this game is going to go and how we're really just seeing kind of the first drop in that big bucket of what is to come. And then it kind of feels like, you have these big, massive ambitions for the game and the universe and land and cards, et cetera, et cetera. And then it's up to Matt and Aggie to kind of, fill in those pieces as, you guys are like the Triforce of Splinterlands, the three of you. When did you kind of feel that shift took place where you had that kind of full free reign in terms of building out the lore and Battles 2.0 and all of these other huge things that is really going to bring the game to life for folks? When did you feel like you turn the page to be able to, pitch these dreams to folks?
That is a good question. I would say that I'm not sure if there was a specific moment in time where that switch got flipped. I think that over the years, I think that it happened gradually, where I like to think that I earned their trust, and so they were willing to give me more and more free reign. And as the years went by, it just each year I subsequently had more freedom and more freedom and more trust to the point to where, like, I feel again, you say, that I give kudos to the team, and I mean, they deserve it. I think that a big part of my job now, I mean, having earned this much trust where I can call myself the VP of, one of the VPs of the company, I think that comes from the fact that I would not be able to be at that level if I couldn't find people better than me. I mean, that's essentially my job. My job is, who can I find that is better than me at this thing? And who can I find that is better at me than this other thing? I mean, I went a couple years where I was doing everything. I was doing the UX, I was doing the UI, I was doing the narrative, I was doing the art, I was doing the animation, I was doing the this, that, and the other, right? Not everything. I mean, we did have some artists who doing the character art, but I mean the graphics and all kinds of other stuff. So, as the company got bigger and more successful, and I was able to, like, hey, Nate, you can go hire somebody. I was like, okay, awesome. I need to find someone better than me. So if I can find someone who's better at me at UX, then another guy who's better at me on UI, and better than me on animation, and better at me than, at telling a story and all these other things. If I can continue to find people better at me and then get out of their way. I mean, I don't always get completely out of their way because, I have to offer some direction and some guidance. And sometimes they'll run off, slightly different, run off into the jungle a slightly different direction than I would prefer. But for the most part, they know that I tell them this, that you're better at me. You're better than me at this thing. So, keep going. Let's go. And I hope they know that. And if they listen to this, just know, hey guys, you're better than me at what you do. But because of that, we work as a team to where, we continue to churn out, hopefully, stuff that Matt and Aggie are happy with. And I get the impression that they are. As I think that, sometimes on town halls, I'll release something in the public, and Matt and Aggie's never seen this stuff before. It's not like they don't micromanage me. They don't play backseat driver to almost anything I do. They just kind of say, Nate, we have an idea, do your thing. And then I say, okay. And then we go and design it out, figure out how it should work, the UX of it, do the UI, figure out what art assets and animations we need to make it happen. We basically do everything we can in the time we have to do our best to make this look like engaging, immersive, user-friendly, and fun. And then we hand it off to engineering and say, hey, let us know if there's any problems. But there you go. We box it all up with a ribbon on top. Have fun. And then they go do their thing. So yeah, it's pretty awesome. It's pretty unbelievable. And, I wish there was a moment in time where I could say, no, on that day I did something, and then they honored me with a sword. They had me kneel down, and they knighted me, and there was a big ritual process and ceremony, and I rose up a new man. I don't know. It just kind of happened gradually over the years as we built that stronger relationship professionally.
Hey, it's amazing, man. I think it's really refreshing to hear as well, coming from, like a VP of such a, successful company, because normally you just don't, like, the people at the top want to still kind of feel that they are better than everyone else. Maybe people don't, maybe people just know they're not, but they would never openly admit it, right? So it's
what you're describing is the typical corporate culture, where job security means you hire stupid people who are not as good as you and that you could look down on. But that is not a really good formula for success. And what's great is, if you guys ever listen to any of the internal team meetings, which I know you're not privy to, and neither is most of the people listening to this podcast, but I will say this, that if you were part of the team and you went to one of these meetings, you would hear Agro not whipping us and not saying, hey, you guys better do this, and what's the problem, you didn't meet your quota last month, or what's the deal here. No, he's talking about values and a new way of doing things, and about, how we're trying to make the world a better place. You'll hear Matt say, guys, we're here to have fun. We're here to make a cool game that we want to play. Don't forget that. Like, this is what you hear out of their mouths. And then same thing for me. I'm looking for, like, again, people who are better than me at these things. I mean, I am kind of like a jack of all trades. I know enough across the spectrum of creative to be able to speak the language, to know how long things should take and what the processes are. I can speak to that, but that my strength isn't specializing in any one of those things. It's being able to take all of these different things and see the cohesive vision, to kind of see where our GPS coordinates are leading us to and find the best route to get us there. That's kind of my strength. Whereas other people, their strength is going to be, well, I can animate way better than Nate, or I can draw way better than Nate, or I can make UI way better than Nate. So, and I'm thankful for that. I want them to be better than me. They need to be better than me, because I know my skill level at all these things, and it is okay. I mean, I'm good. I'm okay. I'm decent. I can hold my own, but I'm not awesome. I'm not great. I'm not the level at which I want this game to be. I want it to be AAA, awesome, super, like, head to head with anything else out there. That's where I want us to be. And I know I can't do that by myself. So, and the founders of the company and the leadership of the company, they have the same philosophy. You could talk to almost anyone in the company and they will say the same thing and tout the same, they have the same mentality, the same spirit. And I think that's where the magic is. That's the secret sauce. That's what helps us to, to do what we do, whether or not we have a big company or a little company, we get the stuff done, because we're able to collaborate and not, we don't have chips on our shoulders.
Yeah. I think that word collaborate, I feel, is, from what you just said just then, is a very important word in your company. Like, if I think about the companies I worked from before, they don't really want to know what we think, and when we do tell them what we think, it's just like, okay, but we're doing it this way, so we're not gonna, it doesn't matter how many times, and it's just, the frustration just builds month after month until it's just like, okay, I'm out of here. So yeah, I think it feels like it is a really great place to work at. Like, if you're working for Splinterlands and the owners are listening to your thoughts, it must be, yeah, a very refreshing place. So I was just wondering, like, from what you've described, you said you're a jack of all trades. What part of your job do you enjoy the most, like getting your teeth stuck into?
Crap, man. It's hard to choose a favorite. I mean,
sharing the eye candy.
I mean, it's like when I go to the art team meetings, oh man, it's like imagine the eye candy part of the town hall times 1,000. It's like you're just this adrenaline rush of like, oh, that is so cool. Oh, wow, look at that. Oh, that's amazing. And then you go to another meeting where let's say it's UX UI, and you're talking about, like, how does it all work? How do all the pieces come together? I mean, it's basically, this is where all the artwork and animations, everything eventually end up, is in the UI, and you could see all the pieces come together and like, oh yes, this is fun, figuring this out, trying to make a user journey that is engaging and user friendly, and that people are going to get excited about. Like, that's really cool too. I have real passion for it. But at the same time, there's also the narrative meetings when I get to hop on with the storytellers, with a figuring out like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if, if the League of Verico, if this was their history and if this is the symbols, and hey, what if we could do this? Or we're talking about the background and the stories behind the characters and how all the subplots can kind of roll together and lead up to rebellion. Or what if we did this and what if we did that? Or how does magic work? Like figuring out all the world building and figuring out like, hey, how does this work? What does it mean to be a battle mage in the arena? Like, what are the rules? Like, what is like when if I'm a spectator, what does that mean? If I am a referee, what does that mean? If I am an opponent to another battle mage and I'm doing this or that, what does that mean? So all of these discussions are like and what's funny is every single one of these creative team meetings, like I want you to think of a typical corporate meeting where you're like kind of like trying to keep your eyes open. You're trying to like not be distracted. Your mind is wandering. You're like, oh, this is so boring. Now imagine creative meetings. They're the exact opposite. Like typically everyone on the call is like, hey, yeah, we're like an hour over on this meeting and no one wants to stop. We keep on going. It's like we have to force ourselves. Well, crap, guys, we got another meeting, or I got to go, or whatever. It's like, okay, we'll continue this tomorrow. It's like, yeah, guys, let's go. So it's very thrilling. It's hard to pick a favorite. I love them all.
Man, I love the passion, man, and it sounds like you guys have internally built such an outstanding community, and what a fun environment to be a part of. And I know that you're incredibly proud of the team that you've put together, Nate. And obviously, we're starting to see the fruits of these labors. Well, not starting to, but we have been for quite some time. Looking back, Nate, at you guys have rolled out a tremendous amount of work and some massive projects over. I came into the game about a year and a couple of months ago, and just since I came in, like the level of artwork is just it blows my mind these days. Some of the artwork that you guys put out and the lore and everything else. Is there one particular kind of aspect of this whole project that you're most proud of from the team's delivery?
I guess if I had to say what that would be, it would be, this will be weird, but it's their attitude. It's kind of like, and this is, I've been manager, level at various different types of companies in the past. And my philosophies always remain the same. It's not always been in the creative or game or blockchain industry, but whenever I've been a manager in the past, something that stays with me consistently, no matter what the industry, is a simple fact of that a lot of times, even though what I said earlier about the portfolio, I have to say you can't say enough about the right attitude, right? If you have the right attitude, that go-getter attitude, even if you don't know what you need to be really good at your job, if you have the right go-getter attitude, it won't take long before you do. And then it won't take too long after that for you to surpass the knowledge of the so-called experts around you. Attitude is just so much. You're right. And so I expect a lot from my team. Like sometimes I feel bad about how high my standards are with my team. And I wonder sometimes, like, wow, if I had me as a boss, like, would I be pissed off all the time? Like, this guy has unreal standards. Like, what the heck is wrong with this guy? And yet, every time I turned around, they are meeting and exceeding almost impossible standards in very short amount of time that I give them. And I love that. I love that about the team. So recently, I told them that, hey, we're going to turn our workflow and pipeline upside down. I want this, and this, where before you were giving me just this, I want this plus 10 other things. And I want it in almost the same amount of time that you were giving me this. And I want it better. We're going to raise our standards. We're going to do more, and we're going to do it in less time. And we're going to do it. And it's going to be awesome. And I'm sure the first time they heard me, they were probably looking at me like, what are you, freaking nuts? But they met the challenge. They went from making And I realize the players aren't really quite seeing the fruits of these labors yet, but we went from, hey, just make a character, a flat dimensional image, and let's put it in a card frame, and that is our business model. That's how we're going to make money, and we're going to have players get excited about this one card, and all we need is this flat image to stick in here, and that could look like, I don't know, make it look like a dwarf or an elf or whatever, and then we'll slap a like a story on it or whatever, or a name, almost like as an afterthought, almost like, hey, you know, all we're doing is adding the cosmetics of this frame with some numbers on it, and that's what we're going to sell. And I wanted so much more than that. I wanted players to not buy this pretty looking thing with numbers on it. I wanted them to buy a story that comes to life, a story that not only comes to life, but someday will engage with them, and that they can feel some sort of emotional attachment to. That's my plan. And so in order to make that plan a reality, we went from a flat image to a layered image where the head, the torso, the arms and the legs were all on separate layers, ready to be rigged for animation. Then on top of that, I said, not only do I want that, now I also want you to start creating chroma variations and skin variations for the day when we might end up, you know, being able to, you know, go ahead and offer more skins for these characters. And on top of that, let's go ahead and pass this off to animation. Let's get voiceover. Let's get sound effects. let's do all this stuff, right? And so, you know, for the past little while, that pipeline went from something very simple to something very involved, and they aced it. At first, it was like a little stumbling a little bit here and there, but we got the project management board set up, we got the pipeline set up, we got people handing off, passing the baton like pros, and now it's like just part of what we do. And someday, hopefully soon, hopefully this year, the players will get to enjoy the results of that new pipeline that right now is just, you know, this grueling thing that Nate makes his team do. So but what I appreciate more than anything else is that, yeah, they all did it with a smile on the face. They all did it with like cheers and high fives and like, we got this, we got you, Nate, we got each other's backs, and they pulled it off. So big hats off to them.
Oh yeah, well, a few things from there, man. I think I always just find it amazing how, like, especially in creative, how you guys get things done, because it's all done through, you know, like you say with your meetings. It's, I would imagine most of it's done via Zoom, right?
Yeah. We have meetings are done via video call. Lots of times we will maybe get on a digital whiteboard. There's a platform called Miro that we use. So we might be on a video call and then we click a button and suddenly we're in a digital white space area, and we're all putting Post-it notes and drawing lines and finding some images on Google and throwing them up as like kind of like a mood board. And we go over the things we like and what we don't like, the pros, the cons, and we just kind of sort it out, a big, massive brainstorming session. So it's fast and furious and fun and a little messy, but the end result is usually just genius. It's a collaborative effort where all these creatives bring their backgrounds and their experiences and their proficiencies, and they all have something to contribute. And by the end of it, when the dust is settled, it's something magical. So it's fun stuff.
Man, I gotta say, I look forward to the day where Nate's eye candy is a recorded snippet from one of these brainstorming sessions. I would love to have a peek behind the curtain and just see what does one of these creative meetings look like. You know, maybe a small whiff of some alpha could be dropped in there, maybe not. But yeah, just getting a peek behind the scenes and getting to see what does, you know, a day in the life of a creative on Team Nate look like. And yeah, I think that would be such a blast to be a part of, even just as a spectator.
No, I've thought about that. Like, what would that be to do a live stream, or like you know, maybe we don't have to get all of creative, but we'd get the narrative team, or we get the art team, or we get the, you know, the design team, or whoever, the multimedia team, there's just so much. It could be as simple as like, hey, a trailer. Like we've put together a few trailers in the past, and that meant like, that's a lot of different things that need to happen in order to produce a trailer. So it's fun. It's like just hearing the music, or just hearing the sound effect, or just seeing the imagery, or seeing an animation, or seeing the story being told, to see all these pieces slowly come together, and then boom, at the end, to see it all in all its majesty is a beautiful thing for sure.
Yeah, it kind of, I don't know. I'm just thinking then it'd just be, I kind of feel like Splinterlands is one of those games that could be made in like a, excuse me, into a documentary in a few years. And I think just, I don't know, like having these clips of you guys, in the meetings, or, chatting. I just think it'd just be great, man. I think definitely it's like, when you, like, I saw that Michael Jordan documentary that was on Netflix, and it was just great. Like, actually someone was walking around, it must have been this big massive cannon on his shoulder, but someone was actually doing that. And like, how amazing it was to record that, those moments of history. I want to get into lore, man. I feel lore is so important to this game, and I feel sometimes it's like something that people are sleeping on. But I really like how you push the importance of it onto your colleagues, because I don't know if people know, and you can explain it in better detail, but a lot of the characters are born from the lore, right? Before they actually go to the drawing board. Am I correct?
Yeah, sometimes not. It depends. Like, for
Okay.
instance, that we had a period of time where we were telling weekly stories. So and then sometimes the characters are born from those stories, and then they become cards, and that's cool. I mean, I really like to see that happening. But if the reverse happens and we create a card and then they end up in a story, hey, great. I think that I love talking about lore. One of the things I did, one of the executive decisions I made, was to tell the writers that you're not writers anymore. You are narrative designers. You are more than just telling stories. You are world building. You are engaging with the player. You are hooking them and sucking them into the world, and then you're saying, look, this is what's happening to them, and you are way more than just a writer. I expect way more than just writing from you. I expect this and this and this and this. So I hereby dub you narrative designer, and thus the narrative team was born. And I think that speaks, I think talking about narrative really speaks a lot to the type of things that I feel passionate about. If you talk to Aggie, you will hear about, wow, we can create a revolutionary platform, or multiple platforms, a legacy, portals from which all other developers and companies can come and flock to and launch their games. And he has this big picture, right? And it's very amazing. And then if you talk to Matt, then you're probably going to hear a slightly different perspective, where he's all about, empowering people with blockchain and what that means for money, and how we can revolutionize the industry by bringing a game for the people and by the people, where they can own their assets to such a degree to where they get something they're not going to get somewhere else. And then when you talk to me, yes, I believe in those things as well, but I really am about the IP. It's kind of like, hey, you can only decentralize so far. If you start decentralizing the stories, or you start decentralizing the world, or you start decentralizing all the narrative elements, then things could get pretty diluted and messy really fast. So having a cohesive, beautiful, polished vision, to me, is paramount, and that is the IP, the world, and the characters that live in that world. And eventually, if the IP is empowering enough and strong enough and compelling enough, then that IP could literally stand on its own. It's kind of like when you when you look at Disney or something like that, they have characters, but those characters supersede the games that they are in. They supersede even possibly the movies they're in due to merchandise and theme parks and other things. There's so much meta to the IP pretty much supersedes everything. So that maybe they originated in a movie or a game or some special medium, but then if they become popular and they become amazing, then they become so much more. They become almost to many people, the IP becomes part of their own identity, almost like a lifestyle brand, where it's like you slap a sticker or you wear something because you identify with that character's beliefs or their personality, or you just like them so much, right? And so, you know, I want Splinterlands to have that too. I want it to be to where someday, eventually, the IP can stand on its own, whether or not there's even a game. If there's comics, whether there's movies, whether there's merchandise, whether there's multiple games, whether there is who knows what. I want the IP to be able to fuel the success of all of those things, build a legacy, if you will, just based purely upon the world we built and the stories we tell. That would be amazing. And if you can imagine a world where we have an IP that is that powerful and combine it with a revolutionary blockchain technology, and then Agrod's vision for the platforms and offering that to the world, holy crap. Talk about, I mean, that's a powerhouse of a vision. So yes, you know, just like you guys, I am extremely bullish on Splinterlands because there's so many layers to it. But bringing it full, I mean, I talk about a tangent, geez. Bring it back to the narrative. I'm very excited to see how the introduction of land is going to only empower lore and storytelling and narrative to have a bigger voice in what the game is like. Because I'm going to do everything in my power to suck you in. To like, at first you're going to be like, well, I'm a rancher, or I'm a farmer, or I'm going to go in my mine and dig for this or that. And starting with 1.5 and then leading to phase 2 of land, you're going to start feeling like, well, I'm crafting now and I'm doing this. And it'll be it'll be this taste, this tiny little taste of like being in the world instead of detached from the world. But I'm not, based upon previous town halls, as I'm sure you're well aware, I don't want to stop there. I want story mode with a passion. I want, when you are fighting in the arena or the tournaments, I want you to feel like you're in the arena or in a tournament. If you're going on a boss fight or a raid, you know what I want to see? I want to see co-op. That's what I want to see. I want to see the player customize their battle mage avatar to look how they want, have the race they want, have the nose they want, have the eyes they want, have the hair they want, to wear what they want. I want that full RPG experience and show that as an avatar, not just on ranked play, but I want them to choose who are you in this world? And can you imagine being able to have a friends list in the game and then cooperatively say, hey, I'm going to play, you know, a rogue type character. You be the ranger, you be the healer, you be the tank or whatever. And let's work together and go off into Praetoria and do this thing. And maybe it's just more card battles. Maybe it is going into a dungeon. Maybe it is whatever it ends up being. That's my vision. I want to see so many types of gameplay in this ecosystem that ranked play is just, you know, it's not an afterthought. It's still going to be important, but there'll be, I want people scared that there's not enough time in the day. Like they're scared to log on because once they log on, they know that there's just endless things to do. And the difference being, and here's the difference. Here's where Agrod and Matt and Nate's vision all kind of like coalesces and combines and merges together as one Voltron of an idea, is that back in the day, I don't know about you guys, I was a big MMO fan. I played EverQuest and EverQuest 2, and I would lose myself in this world. I mean, it was bad. Like, no, it was unhealthy how bad it was. Like, and I'm sure a lot of people were in the same boat where they would spend hours and hours and hours of their life every single day adventuring and going on raids. And the thing is, the beauty of it was you had a headset on and you were talking to at first strangers who became friends, not only friends, but lifelong friends, many of them. And I still have them on social media. And sometimes we talk, and heck, I mean, I even live in the same state with some, and from years and years ago, we still stay in contact. That is so freaking cool. That camaraderie, that sense of fellowship and friendship. So I would like to continue that. But what's cool is EverQuest 2, or World of Warcraft, or pick your poison. A lot of people could walk away from that and they didn't own their assets. They have nothing to show for it other than some friendships, which that's still cool. Friendships is nothing to frown upon as like, hey, that wasn't worth my time. No, lifelong friendships are worth having. But in all other regards, you walk away with nothing other than, well, some entertainment, which is cool. I mean, it's worthwhile to have entertainment, but when you spend so much time on something to the verge of it being unhealthy, then it's like, and you walk away with no financial benefit, you're not any better off in life. In fact, you might be worse off because you could have had a part-time job instead of playing all day, right? But that's where it changes with Splinterlands. I imagine a day where you can spend all day on the weekend just playing. I want to play co-op in a dungeon with my friends. I want to go play survival mode over here. Hey, let's go do this raid with the guild. No, let's do a boss fight. You know what? In between all that, I'm going to get a tournament in, and I'm going to do some rank play, try to go up on the leaderboards. I'm going to do all these things that before you know it, the day is gone. And you know what? Okay, because guess what? You earned assets worth real value. You earned crypto worth value. You walked away actually being better off than when you started. That's crazy to me. Like, that's insane that you could have that much fun and yet you could still make your life better. Like, what? So yeah, I'm excited about the future.
Wow, that has blown me away. I get the feeling it's blown B Jangles away as well. So, like, for those people, like as you say, that rank play could just be an afterthought. But from what you're saying, is like, that's crazy, because for many people, rank play is like just amazing, right? It's like it's just addiction. As soon as you finish, you win, you just want to keep rolling. When you lose, you want to keep rolling. So, like, okay, for example, like for those people who have never played EverQuest or don't know what it is, like, could you describe how you would play it?
No, for sure.
How it roll?
So, I mean, if we're talking about, let's say, the low-hanging fruits, right? Low-hanging fruits would be like, how do we add more game modes to what we already have? Because we've gone years with the same game mode, and at most people, this is 100%. That is the game, other than guild brawls and tournaments. This is the game. So it's something that I. And again, anyone listening to this, just don't get me wrong. This is not Nate saying this is what's going to happen. This is we're just bouncing ideas off the wall, right? This is just me, like, I'm just speaking on a podcast, just spewing out ideas, and maybe they'll happen and maybe they'll never happen. It really depends upon whether I could convince Aggro to Matt or anybody else. But ultimately, my vision for what would be great to see initially would be, number one, and I spoke about this on the last town hall, is break apart daily focus. Like, to me, the daily focus it's not a complete failure, but it is not what we had wanted it to be. And so, hey, let's just take that piece out and let's go ahead and make that PvE. And I think I spoke a little bit about that. And then, so you got ranked play now, and you got this other game mode where you're not competing against other people, you're competing against the system. And that system would basically, in my head, what I would propose is that the system creates a very challenging team to beat, and the system will be working with more mana than you are, and so it becomes a puzzle to solve. So the first time you throw a team together and toss it out the system, now keep in mind this is a daily focus, so you might be required, not recommended, not proposed, you're required to use XYZ cards. Maybe it's fire team cards, or maybe it is stealth cards, or whatever it is, whatever your daily focus is. That's how you solve the puzzle. It has to be with these cards, so that you learn And by the end of the day, you're an expert at using those kind of cards. And so if the system has like 35 mana and the player only has 20 mana, well, number one, you're in a tough spot because you can only use certain types of cards, or you're encouraged, you have to have at least this many on your team, right? So that's limitation number one. Can't just use any cards in any team makeup. You have to use these certain type of cards. Limitation number two, you got less mana than the opposing team. So you have to figure out how to be creative with your strategy and what are you going to do? And chances are the first time you go against the system's team, you're going to lose. But if you win, hey, celebration, the horns blare, you get bonus points, maybe you get extra rewards. Because I want to make sure that people don't just send in one card and then they lose just so they could see the enemy team and then the second team. No. Let's give enough incentive to where you really, really try to win the first time going in blind. But eventually, after a few tries, you get it. You figure out what cards to use, and you're able to overcome these odds that are against you. Because the other team doesn't change. You just keep trying a new strategy. Eventually, you beat that battle. And when you beat that battle, I bet you that the daily focus that you have that day, you are better at those type of cards. That by the end of that battle and any subsequent battles, then you will walk away feeling like a pro on healing, or a pro on stealth, or a pro on tanks or fire cards or death cards or whatever that focus was. You would have learned something. And so it would be whether you're a new player trying to learn the game, or you're a veteran player who thinks he knows his stuff, but he's too scared to play the evil bots. Like, okay, let's get you to a level where you could beat those bots in your sleep. How are we going to do that? It's kind of like, I see it as kind of like, you're in a dojo with the master of martial arts, and he puts you against this ridiculous challenges, but eventually you figure out how to get around them and you walk away from the dojo as your own master. And I think that's the best place to stick. People have been talking about battle pass. Well, I think that's the best place for something like that to live, to where the rewards have clear milestones. Every day those rewards might change a little bit, and they'll probably be cosmetic in nature, whether it's skins or something else. And then the other third amount, now I'm talking about two gameplay modes that would exist within the arena, because again, I think narrative is important. I want you to feel like you're a battle mage who's in an arena and he has three paths to go down. Either option A, leaderboard, leagues, I'm going to face off against one opponent. Option two, I'm going to go train to be better. Daily focus. That's another thing I could do in the arena. I can go up against the system to try to, kind of like the X-Men in the danger room, right? I can go ahead and get better at what I do as a battle mage. Option three, I think another great gameplay mode within the arena setting or narrative is I think we could do more with the get up and go tournaments, where you have a waiting room. So and it fills up, and as soon as it fills up, boom, you go. Except instead of the ones that are in the tournaments, I think it would be cool where when you go to the battle screen, you don't see the cards you're playing, you're seeing the other battle mages. I imagine that it's maybe you and a handful of other battle mages who are in the waiting room, and when you submit your teams, then you see that play out as like the battle mages are losing a little bit of health or whatever. And then, boom, one of the battle mages are victorious, or they kind of say, oh, this guy got first place, second place, third place, or whatever. And then rewards are distributed, and then boom, do you want to go on the next one? If you thought that was fun, then just keep going. And then as soon as the waiting room fills up with enough people, it starts over again, and you just keep on going. So I think that that we can easily probably come up with a couple different new ways to play the game that exist within the arena setting that don't involve us creating like story mode and raids and boss fights and all this other stuff, even though we want to do that stuff too. Like, I think that all of us want to do all that extra stuff. But as far as low-hanging fruits, like what can we kind of do that's unique and different and special right away, rather than wait, a long time, then I think there are opportunities in front of us. But this whole conversation started off with narrative and MMOs and stuff. So if we get past that and we say, okay, Nate, these other gameplay modes are cool, but what were you talking about before with avatars and stuff? And that is something the art team is working on. I'm not very overt about it on town halls and things like that, but for those who attended Splinterfest, then you know that part. I was up on stage sharing on the big screen, like custom avatars and what that would look like and what that would be like. And it's like, haven't forgotten, it's not a forgotten idea. It's something that the creative side is actively working on. And when we have more to share and when we're ready to launch it, then definitely, I'm going to start talking about it more and more in town halls. But I will say that so far I'm pretty darn excited about it. It's not if it's going to come, it's when it's going to come. And when it comes, I think it's going to be freaking awesome. Where players are going to be able to choose their persona, their identity within the Splinterlands world, decide, to make it feel more real that they are a battle mage. And then, I'd love to do player housing. I'd love to say, okay, now that you know what you look like, where do you live? What does that look like? I'd love to, and then once we figure out what you look like and where you live, then it's like, okay, do you want to leave your house and go where? Do you want to go over here? Do you want to go over there? And then pretty soon, whether or not we use the Praetoria map or whether we use some kind of other navigation or UI or whatever, the bottom line is I want to start adding more and more and more gameplay modes that make you feel like you live in this fantasy world. And the more we can do that and the more we can push that, I think that all the talk about bots or any other recent, and take your pick. You go into Maps chat and there's usually drama about this or drama about that, about something. I think that more and more those conversations will just become like not quite as important anymore when people just don't have time to complain anymore because there'll be so many game modes. There'll be so many things to do. I think that, yeah, I can't wait for that day, and I see it coming. I mean, we're at a good pace development wise. We're producing, we're updating, we're doing what we said we would do. We got our roadmaps, we got our plans and our corporate structure, and things are set up to where it's just execute, just go, go, do. How fast can you go? So, I think we're in a good place for it. I think we built a strong foundation from which to launch, any number of these ideas.
Holy shit, Nate. All right. Well, that was that. Talk about the brain dump. That was that was huge, man. So, geez, just speaking within your vision for what is available as potential for within the arena. I can't imagine, and I think we would need a separate, 5-hour time slot to talk about what your vision is for within land, and what kind of opportunities present themselves through the opening up of land. What is kind of the next, if you're privy to say, what is the how do we start to bridge that gap? What is from where we are now to this world that you just alluded to? What is the kind of most logical next step, and how far off are we from seeing something like that come to fruition within the game?
No, that's a great question. So typically what I do, we talked about earlier in the in our conversation about, well, how much free reign do you have, Nate? And it depends. I would say that for the most part, I have my obligations to meet the deadlines and the commitments that we are expected to fulfill, to reach our business goals, to reach the intended success of the company per the board and the founders of the company and the leadership. Like, there's a lot of decisions where we look at the data, we look at what's going on, we look at the community, we look at the industry and the marketplace, just everything, and we say, look, we want to do all this stuff, but we can't do everything. This has to take priority, and here's why. And I think Matt made a good argument for it in a recent town hall where it's like, hey, look, we're not ready right now to go head to head at a AAA game level. So what we should focus though on, and what probably makes sense, and I agree with him, is how can we get the value of everyone's assets to go as high as possible, and keep it sustainable to where everyone is feeling good about the value of SPS, the value of DEC, the value of their cards, the value of all their assets in the game. If everything is going up, then that right there is what we could say that differentiates us from other games. That differentiates us not from other games in general, but other games in the blockchain space as well. If the market craps and everyone's assets go down, but ours goes up, well, we must be doing something right, and that's the goal. But at the same time, everyone's assets aren't going to go up if the game isn't any fun at all, if it doesn't even look like a game. And so we do try very hard on the creative side to make sure that a minimum standard is upheld, even though we're in MVP mode. And for those listening who don't know what we mean by MVP, it's minimal viable product. Our philosophy in development for the past, well, for as long as we've been in existence, has been a very MVP mentality. It's like, hey, just get it out, let the community play with it, and then we'll iterate. We'll try to sculpt it and change it and make it better over time. But we're not going to wait until it's beautiful and then launch it, because that might take too long. The market might change in the time it takes us to polish everything up, or things might, whatever. We might have to pivot or adapt or be agile, and that's important for a small to mid-sized company. So I will say that we that's the top priority right now. Let's get everyone's assets up, and we're going to do that through land. We're going to do that through the economy. We're going to do that with all kinds of different things. Having said that, as long as I meet our creative commitments and I do not delay the roadmap and I do not delay anything that engineering needs, then most of the time, not always, I don't win every battle, but most of the time, if I can make a good case for it with Agrod and Matt and say, look, I really, really think we should do this. I want to do this. This is my vision. I promise I will not take resources away from XYZ. It'll fly under the radar, and I'll do it on the side. And when it's ready, it'll be ready, and I'll box it up and put it on the shelf. And as soon as the engineering or the devs are free, they can take it off the shelf and they can start working on it. How does that sound? And most of the time they say, okay, Nate. And so yes, there's stuff that I'm allowed to kind of tinker with and work on. And if I make a good case for it, then, their ears are open. They're pretty great about that. They're very open-minded. And then if I come up with something stupid and it doesn't make any business sense, they'll tell me that too. I mean, and luckily we have a great relationship, I think, to where hey, as long as my voice can be heard, even if I get a no, that's okay. I still do what I love, and I can't win every battle, but I win enough of them to where I feel pretty good about what's going on. And some of the stuff I talked about, I think could come to fruition. I think that, we are actively working. I mean, we've been vocal on the fact that, yes, we do want Battles 2.0 to happen. Yes, we do want animations and sound effects and all that cool stuff. Yes, I already mentioned I do want custom avatars and player housing and all this other stuff to happen. So there's a lot of stuff that hey, working on it little by little. It's not the top priority, but I'm not dropping the ball either. I'm making sure that there's at least someone working on something so that someday, yes, we will have these things.
I think it's just the case again that people are not like you mentioned before as well, you're working on things 6-12 months before they actually come out, right? So I think people
that's the other thing.
Yeah.
Every town hall, it's kind of okay, eye candy, Nate. I'm like, oh crap, what do I got this week? There's plenty to show, but I can't show any of it. This is for stuff months away, or this is for later on at the end of the year. This is fill in the blank, right? So yeah, and then I sit on it for a little while, and then as we get closer to actually being able to launch this stuff, then I'm able to go into town hall and say, hey, look at this. So yeah, you're right. The creative department definitely needs a lot more runway than, let's say, development. It has not been there's oftentimes where I will take an entire team of people working like maybe a month straight, all to provide the assets and hand them off to a dev. And then they take all these assets. Now, keep in mind what we do. We create all these flow charts and user journeys, and we spec everything out and figure out, hey, we should probably make it work like this or work like that. Then we do the UI for it. And when we design the UI, we share with the devs a link to where they can click on every asset and get the hex value, get the pixel width, the dimensions, the margins, the padding. Heck, there's even a little copy paste thing where they can copy the CSS code and get it into what they got to do. So from a UX UI perspective, I try very hard to make sure that they have to do as little as possible. They just have to like take what we give them. And there's a lot of specialized knowledge that the dev needs to know. It's not like we did all the coding for them. They still have to do all the coding, and we wouldn't have any clue or idea how to do that stuff. So thank God for our talented devs and engineers. But we do, for our creative side, we do try as much as possible to not just like chuck them some stuff and hope they figure it out. Like we try to like be very detailed. Same thing with art assets and animation, the copy, all the other stuff, right? So we hand them off all of this stuff that took us like weeks, maybe months to make. And it's funny because sometimes the dev will just like, oh, thanks. And then, a day later, it's done. Like it took us like forever to get all this stuff ready. And then they just, they code it in like a day and they're like, okay, what's next? Or like, oh my gosh, well, okay, give us another month. And a team full of people will start doing this, rinse and repeat. What are you going to, it's like, holy crap. So yeah, creative does need a lot of runway sometimes before we're ready to be able to hand off to the dev what they need. And once they get it, sometimes it doesn't take them very long to execute.
I don't know. I've got so many questions. Like you keep talking, and then there's so many things keep popping into my head. But I did have one. I was really interested to find out some more of it because I just recently just found out about it this week and about the encyclopedia that was printed up in the startup. I know there was like 100 copies, more than 100 copies printed. So how much of the lore that is written now follows the same storyline as that? Because that's you can look at it online. There's a website called Splinter Lore for those people who are listening, and the encyclopedia is all online. So you just go through, and honestly, it's such I just started reading it, but just to give a bit of a background to the game you're playing, it's great, man. So would you be able to kind of tell people the story behind that and like how much of the actual current game is following that?
That's a great question. So the encyclopedia is near and dear in the hearts to many of the OG players. The game was such a collaborative community effort at the beginning, because pretty much all the content of that encyclopedia was crowdsourced directly from the community, to the point to where the Discord had a channel for this continent and another channel for that continent, and people would volunteer and say, okay, I'm part of this team and I'm part of that team, and they split off into teams, and these teams of players, fans of this vision we had for a game, would go and compile and put together and get some binder paper and draw maps and stuff, and they would create this world, right? And the fruits of that labor resulted in this encyclopedia that was printed. And you could win by contributing to the Kickstarter at the time, because at the game it was kind of like being jump started with a Kickstarter, and that was one of the rewards, right? So now fast forward into the future, where we now have a narrative team, and we're looking at this book, which is funny because a lot of the content of the book was made to kind of like slap a fantasy theme over this card game that we're building. Like, hey, let's make sense of the game mechanics by adding some flavor to it. So we have a chapter on this and a chapter on that, and each chapter represented a continent, and each continent represented a splinter, right?
Mm.
Now the narrative team, we've gone back and forth and debated this for a while as to like how much of that encyclopedia do we consider to be canon. um and I know it's going to break people's hearts to hear that word, like, wait a minute, Nate, some of it's not canon, what are you talking about? Like that, like we want that whole book to be true. It's like, okay, well, here's the issues that we had, and here's how we resolved them, and I think that most people are going to be happy with the solution. So uh essentially, the way the game started off was purely as a card game. We hadn't thought of land, we hadn't thought of story mode or raid boss or boss fights or this, that, or the other. We hadn't explored the possibility of this IP becoming much more than just a simple card game, because it was a simple card game. And so having lore that said, okay, all of these cards over here represented this continent, and this continent represents fire, whatever that means, right? This continent is fire, and all the creatures who live there are fire. Okay, well, all right, for a simple card game, sure. And then we have, oh wait, we have another continent, and all the creatures who live there are earth. We're like, okay, suddenly the logic starts to break down a little bit, because you don't get too far before you say, well, wait a minute. On this so-called fire continent, do they not have, dirt? Do they not have trees? Do they not have bushes and shrubbery? Like, like, what exactly makes this continent over here Earth and this one not Earth, right? So suddenly the logic of it, like at first it's like, if it's just a simple card game, sure. But as we started to want to tell stories and make sense of the world, and started to flesh out what would eventually become land and players exploring the land, this world, we started to realize that the original lore was a little too simplistic. It was great for a simple card game, but not so great for an expansive, beautiful, rich world full of depth and wonder, right? And so we looked at that and said, okay, what kind of changes do we got to make here? Here's the other problem, is that the encyclopedia implied that an entire continent was basically controlled by one kingdom each. And when you think about it, like, you just look at Europe, like there's a bazillion countries and cultures and people. And I mean, every continent is that way. You look at every continent in the real world and you're like, all right, I don't know if that makes any sense. Continents are pretty big. And if this is high fantasy with a medieval slant to it, like, there's probably going to be a whole bunch of kingdoms, like zillions of kingdoms on each of these continents. Why does the encyclopedia only say there's like one each? And why are they, so suddenly we say, okay, let's take a step back. Let's figure this out. So what we ended up saying is like, well, okay, the first thing we did was went in the website and we changed all the words that said splinter to element. That's the first thing we did. So if you go on the team building screen, it used to see splinters and it would say fire, earth, water, etc. Now it says element. What element are you choosing? So you're no longer choosing a geopolitical faction. What you're choosing is a form of magic. What type of magic are you doing? Because you are a battle mage. So what you're choosing is, I want to use water magic. I want to use fire magic per the rules of the arena, per the sport that people play in the Splinterlands world. Because that's essentially what battle mages are. They're celebrity sports people who go off into the arena and they're flashy with their magic and they use certain types of magic per the rules of the game. That's basically what you're doing. So we changed splinters to elements, and the idea being that splinters, we like the idea of splinters being geopolitical factions. So in other words, the Order of the Silver Shield, or if we said the Dark Eternals, or all these different factions within the encyclopedia, well, then those could be splinters. That made more sense to us. So now, of course, the OGs in the game still call them splinters. Fire splinter, water splinter. But on the narrative team internally, we see them very much as these are elemental forms of magic. Those are not splinters. Those are elemental forms of magic. And I'm hoping that come Rebellion, if again, something we showed off in Splinterfest, which may or may not happen, we'll see. But at Splinterfest, we introduced new card frames, and in the corner they have these little icons. Like, hey, if you're part of the Gooba Goblin tribe, maybe you have a little icon to represent that, or maybe if you are, part of the Thieves Guild of Westerwork, then you have another little faction icon. And so these little factions in the corner of the card would represent splinters. These are factions. These are things that would perhaps unlock synergies, or perhaps when item and spell cards become a thing, only a dwarf could hold this mighty hammer of whatever, and only elves could use this, or et cetera, et cetera. We could use splinters in interesting, cool ways to add extra levels of gameplay to what we got going on, the mechanics, right? So yeah. So when we talk about the encyclopedia, we do intend to still use a lot of it. In fact, we have a wiki. So you mentioned Splinter Lore. We plan on eventually redirecting that domain to our wiki, which is lore.splinterlands.com. And that will definitely be all of the stuff that is actual canon, not fan fiction, not like, hey, this is cool nostalgia from back in the day, even though we'll probably take a piece of that, take that digital encyclopedia and put it in the wiki for old time's sake so that people could see it and reference it. But ultimately, our narratively Joey is taking point on trying to get he has a whole bunch of articles written on this wiki already. They're just not visible to the public yet. So right now, I think if you go to lore.splinterlands.com, you could see a little write-ups on different territories of Praetoria to kind of like, coincide with our introduction of land. And but yeah, there's a lot of articles ready for review and to be edited. But once they're ready, they're going to start getting unlocked, and you're going to see, whoa, that wiki is going to like become immense. You're going to be able to read up on every faction, every race, every higher plane and lower plane of existence. You're going to be able to read about the currencies and this, that, and the other. And you're going to realize that the Splinterlands world is so much bigger, so much more mature, and has so much more depth than that first initial Kickstarter encyclopedia ever had. And what's great is it's going to be the jumping board from which all the players are going to be able to explore this world. And my dream, what I'm passionate about, is when story mode does happen, all the people who cared about the lore, all the people who cared about learning the language of the elves or the runes, or what's the history of the Rift Watchers, who really immersed themselves in the lore of Splinterlands, well, those people will have a leg up and be able to pursue what story mode represents and all that good stuff. So I think that'll be really cool. Their efforts and their interest will finally pay off. So we'll see how that goes. Speaking of which, yeah, another thing I want to add to the game is I would love to add reputation, factions, things of that nature. So as you go and help one faction, your reputation goes up, but their enemies of that faction force your reputation to go down with them. We've all played games similar to that. So that, if I click on, let's say, your player profile, it shows your custom-made avatar. It shows your rankings in rank play, modern and wild, but maybe it shows other stuff too. Like, hey, what's your reputation with the elves of this forest? And why do these dwarves hate you so much? Or, et cetera, et cetera. And it could show all kinds of other cool narrative-driven aspects to your character within the world.
Oh, man. Yeah, I've like Kieran, like Wasco, the encyclopedia is, unfortunately, it's before my time, and I would have loved to been able to contribute to the Kickstarter and receive that, something about having that physical copy and being able to flip the pages and read the stories, and there's nothing that compares. You can swipe all the web pages you want, but nothing beats flipping the pages and feeling the paper and taking that deep dive into the story. I would love. It would be
very cool once we get the wiki fleshed out. It would be very cool to send it to print like we did the other one, and allow people the opportunity to hold it in their hands. I definitely agree. And for those people who are a little sad that I'm saying that some of the encyclopedia is not canon, don't get me wrong. There are little tweaks to the way magic works, the way geopolitical factions work. There's nothing major that we're just chucking out the window. If anything, we're just adding to it. So, for instance, if there's continent over here in the encyclopedia, it says, well, there's this faction that lives here. What we're now saying is that faction doesn't disappear, but there's like 20 other factions on this continent besides just that one. So, you know, the kingdom that's explained in the encyclopedia is just one out of many on that continent, is what we're saying now. So we're not really taking away, it's more like we're adding to.
Sure. I'm curious, Nate, and I'm guilty of this too. And I've overlooked. I've slept on the lore for a really long time. You know, there's certain favorite cards that I'll go read the whole lore, and I'll watch the YouTube shorts. How do we, as a community, expand the interest in lore? Is that something that you guys are? I know you guys are actively pursuing that. What is the answer to that question? But I've considered. Have you thought about adding a facet to the gamut of your creative team expectations to, kind of present the lore via storyboard, something along the lines like a comic book, and all of a sudden we have like a manga where you can flip through and read the full story in comic book form fashion. Is that something that you guys have kind of thought through? Is that on the purview of future possibilities?
No, absolutely. In fact, I think at Splinterfest we showed a preview of what a Splinterlands comic book would look like, right? So the idea had to be put on pause because it just didn't fall within the realm of high priority for the last 6 months or whatever. Like that was not a super high priority to publish a comic book. However, I will say that I don't think that idea is gone. It's just kind of like been paused. I have had meetings with third parties who maybe we could pass the baton to. I've explored different possibilities when it comes to things like that. So I definitely would still like to see that happen. I think in the short term, trying to get people involved in the lore and the narrative, I think it'll feel more natural once we do introduce the ability to customize your persona within the Splinterlands, find some sort of housing, be able to, story mode will play a really huge part, like being right there involved, having a role to play. I was really happy to see in the recent survey about the royalty titles versus the League of Verico titles. I was thrilled to see that the community voted in favor of the league titles, because that really allows the narrative team to flex their muscles in having land also be part of the storytelling. And I think that the more that the more that people feel that they're part of the story, the more interested they will be in the world around them, and that means the lore, finding out what is that city, who lives there. Oh, the hippo people live there. What's that about? Or, oh, isn't Jared Scar a hippo person? Yeah, what's up with that dude? Oh, he's an arena master. What does that mean? Where's his arena? Oh, it's over there on the map. Well, I'm gonna go check that out. What does that mean? So, I mean, once the seed is planted and you feel like you're walking around in this world in a limited sense, then you start caring more about the stories and the lore and what's happening. But I definitely agree with you. I would love to see the comic book stuff. What else did we share at Splinterfest? We shared that RPG starter guide. That was cool. So it's based on D&D 5e, and it was a starter guide for those who like, playing Dungeons and Dragons type games. I'm a big fan. I try to ever since I moved to Florida, I left some family behind in California, and so as a family, we reconnect every couple of weeks on a Zoom session. And we have a cool dungeon master, and we've played in the Star Wars universe, we played in Dungeons and Dragons, we played in the Old West. We've had these different settings and campaigns and environments, and it's fun. It's a way to connect. But I dream of the day someday where I'll be able to play D&D in the Splinterlands campaign world, and so I'd love to see that happen. I think that as we build out the wiki, and then we perhaps get to the point to where we could print out another encyclopedia, it's not that far off just adding some stats to the pages in addition to all the lore in there, and boom, now you have a campaign world to play online Dungeons and Dragons with your buddies. So I think that could be fun too. There's all kinds of opportunities and options that you can take an IP and just run with it in so many different directions. I look forward to the day where we can make that happen.
I think having that RPG Splinterlands is just like another avenue to get people who have never played the game to start getting an interest in the game, right? Because like you know, you've played it before, and what happens, you know, people just hear about a new game and they don't know what it's like. Okay, we'll try it out, and then just that, it just perks people's interest, right?
No, I agree. I think what else did we show at Splinterfest? We showed an Uno type game based on Splinterlands characters. We called it, what did I call it? Mana Surge, I think. So we designed a game and we created the assets and we're like, hey, can we print this? And Aggie and Matt were like, well, now's not the best time, Nate, but don't throw that away because we're going to print it out eventually. And we have, you know, the box art and we have the card stuff and it would be fun to play. And so, you know, the more we could do stuff like that, where you go into your local game shop and there's someone sitting at the table playing this quick, fast-paced Uno type game, and then you got some other people over here playing the RPG of the Splinterlands, and then you have someone over here on their mobile phone playing the actual, you know, rig play battles, and then you have someone over here reading a Splinterlands comic book, and then, you know, maybe someone else is over there watching the TV, and someday we'll have a freaking animated show. That would be cool. I mean, I dream of the day where all those things are happening and everyone is just like enjoying Splinterlands in different ways. That would be cool.
Yeah, man. I think the possibilities, like you say, just endless, right? like I'm sure between the three of us, we could come up with like a hundred different avenues. Like I also just want to. I know we're getting close to the time we kind of agreed on, but I'm really interested, like what your thoughts are on AI and like it's feels like a just a bulldozer, just like there's no stopping it. But how? Like I remember someone talking about it, and they were saying like, you know, rather than just be, you know, dismissive of it and just like be negative towards it, you have to kind of like embrace these new technologies. It's kind of like, you know, like the car. People poo-pooed the car at the beginning. People poo-pooed like Bitcoin at the beginning. Well, people are still poo-pooing Bitcoin, and you know, people are doing the same with AI. And I was just wondering your perspective on it, like from the creative side. Like, is it something that is worrying people in your field?
Okay, so I'm gonna take the part where I'm probably my subconscious brain is terrified about Skynet and the Matrix, and we're gonna be taken over by a robot overlord. So I'm gonna put that on a shelf, and we'll talk about how do I talk about creative specifically, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is what you're asking about. So I would say that from a creative standpoint, and this has been brought up before on I think on a previous town hall, someone, you know, it's been brought up before plenty of times, like, hey, why don't you guys use AI, just pump out a whole bunch of skins or whatever. My concern there is that I am very much trying to create an IP. And in order to create an intellectual property, an IP, a legacy from which we can do all the things that we just finished talking about, means that we have to have a very we have to be able to claim that we have an original vision that we can legally protect as our own. And I really am trying hard not to dilute that or to open it up to I guess, legal vulnerability. The more that that we would attempt to use AI, and for those of you who looked into the legalities of AI, even if we ignore the ethics of it, because that's a whole nother ball of wax, right? I mean, I have an entire creative team, all of them very passionate about what they do. And the idea that their work and their efforts and their blood, sweat, and tears could possibly be scraped from the internet, stolen, and put into someone else's work that they claim as their own, that is very offensive to most creatives. But if we ignore the scary parts of AI and we ignore the ethics part of it that people talk about that I just mentioned, and we only look at, well, what kind of a very real practical value does AI bring to the workflow in order to do more in less time? Like, I think that's what we're talking about. Then the two challenges I have are, number one, can I legally protect the output of this? And right now, I'm not clear on international law, but because we are based in the United States, what I can say for US law anyways, currently today, right now, it can't be protected. If I go and make something with AI and then I put it on the website, then there is no way for us to legally protect that. Someone could take the image that was produced off of our website, go use it on their website, and there's nothing we can do. They can go create their own comic book with that character or whatever we produced, and then off they go. If I go and say, well, I'm going to make skins off our original characters, I want to go take, the Lord of Darkness character that we have and create an AI skin. My concern is that I've now diluted our IP to where it's possible that we can't protect it the same way that we could have if we didn't use AI. So that's step one. That's part of my concern, is that how do we legally protect that? Right now, there's so many court cases flying around where people are suing the AI companies, and those court battles have not finished. They're still in progress, or they're about to happen, or they are happening. So I would prefer, I feel like I don't want to gamble with a company's success. I don't want to be that guy who says, well, Nate went ahead and gambled and that didn't pay off. Now we lost all our characters or our lore. People are stealing it or put it in, pornography, or they're doing this with it or that with it, and there's nothing we can do about it. Like, I don't want to be the one to make that happen. So I'm being very cautious. I'm being very safe. I'd rather wait till the dust settles and see what the courts say, either in the US or outside the US. How do they treat AI produced material? And what I found is that as I look into what other game studios are doing, they're shying away from AI as well for the same reasons. So I'm like, okay, well, they must feel the same way that I do. So I think I made a good call. Now there's the other side of that coin. The flip side of the coin is, what if we, because I can't get specific. I won't get specific, but I will say that I was asked to work on a project, and that project was for something, and that project, it was deemed that maybe we don't care as much about legally protecting the art assets for this particular thing because of this, and this. And it was like, I can't get into specifics because it's all confidential, but ultimately we did. I went to the creative team and I says, okay, what we're going to do is we are going to do this right. We're going to methodically analyze all the different AI resources at our disposal, and the ones we don't have access to, we're going to get access to. So I even, I touched base with the CEO of Scenario, which is an AI company that caters to game studios. We got whitelisted for that. We tried this, we tried that, all the different AI possibilities. And then we started saying, okay, we have a project, we got to make game assets for it. Let's see how far we can get with AI. And we went ahead and we started doing it. And we just ended up frustrated. We couldn't get a cohesive, consistent output of art assets that all felt like they belonged together. And then in order to make the assets feel like they stylistically matched, required so much time and so much effort and so many prompts that it would have been way faster to just have one of our internal team members just crank it out. Like, instead of spending hours trying to get the AI to produce the art exactly how we need it, I could have taken half the time to just have the artist just do it. So, that was one of the conclusions we made, is like, well, for this particular thing, we're having trouble. The other things that we had trouble with was, once we do produce the assets, they are never going to be produced the same way we produce Splinterlands assets. For Splinterlands, like I told you earlier in our podcast here, I changed the pipeline from just flat art to layered art to rig for animation art to being able to do all this stuff with it. AR in its current iteration right now, I don't know if it's capable of doing that. It could create flat art that we cannot legally protect, and it's not prepped for animation or anything. It's not layered at all. So, not to say that in the future AI can't get to the point where, yes, it could easily do all the things that Nate needs it to do. At that point, we'll revisit, or we don't have to revisit. We're keeping an eye on it. We're keeping an eye on it. I promised Agra that I would keep an eye on the AI industry and any progress that's being made in that area, because it does have currently right now a lot of promise for planning and conceptualization. Like if we're in a brainstorming mission and we got to just generate some concepts really fast, then that's where AI shines. But we'll take those concepts and ideas and we'll say, well, that looks cool. I don't know about that idea. Oh, this is perfect. Take a little bit from that AI concept and that one, mush it together, and go ahead and let's use that as prompts for the art team to create something new. And then they kind of reference that and they say like, okay, I get where your head's at. And then they go off and do it. So we don't actually use the AI artwork in the finished product, but we might use it for just coming up with ideas, just throwing stuff at the wall, right? That's a great utilization of AI, because we can, create concept art very rapidly at that point. We don't use the concept art in the final game, but we use concept art as we're trying to figure stuff out, right?
Great question and great answer, Nate. It's refreshing to hear that. I'm sure anybody who is pursuing the creative arts, just a sigh of relief in hearing that you guys are at least for now, committed to creativity in its purest form and using AI as a tool for nothing more than concepts. A great use of that resource. And I've taken a little bit of a dive down the rabbit hole that is Midjourney, and it's. I'm not the most creative guy. I have a little bit of a creative eye, but being able to generate some stuff through something like Midjourney is it's so much fun. Yeah. But obviously being able to leverage your team, and that's why you've hired these guys, and you've mentioned time and time again that you're committed to surrounding yourself with people that are more skilled in particular skill sets than you are, and that's you're giving them the opportunity to shine by steering clear of AI, not to mention the ethical piece and the legal piece. So kudos to you and the team. And again, great response. I love hearing you kind of expand on, being that undying commitment to creativity in its purest form.
For sure.
Nate, so you a few minutes ago, and I want to be cognizant of time here. So last question from me. Rebellion is coming down the road for us. I think it's safe to say 7, 8, 9 months at the most. And we were talking earlier about that kind of lead time that creative needs. Is Rebellion like artwork and stories? Like, do you have the story of Rebellion told internally, or can you give us a picture of what that looks like?
We actually do. The narrative team, if you were to ask the narrative team, what does Rebellion look like? We got spreadsheets, we got Word docs, we got freaking, Miro digital whiteboard full of all kinds of stuff. And it's, it's kind of like we're trying to plan it out to where it's not just thrown together. That there's a lot of depth to the storytelling. There's lots of subplots weaving in and out and concluding into a grand, amazing launch and year as people kind of play through the events of what the Rebellion is. So, and same thing with the art. Art team has been working on it. We are producing art for Rebellion. Art has been made for Rebellion. So it's just that, it takes time to come up with that many stories and that many characters. And it's like, we look at Chaos Legion, that was like over 100 card set. So, imagine if Rebellion is a similar size. It takes a little while.
Yeah, man. I've said this many times on the podcast. I just think the way Matt managed to balance out Chaos Legion where pretty much every card is can be played in certain contexts. Obviously, some more than others, but yeah, for him to go through that all again, yeah, I can imagine there's some one plus ones going on in his head, but yeah. So yeah, sorry, man. Just I know we're kind of close to the time. Is there anything else, Ben, you wanted to ask before we?
No, again, I just want to thank you, Nate. Number one for taking the time to hop on with us, measly peons over at the People's Guild. I certainly appreciate you taking the time and bigger picture, everything that you're dedicated to with the company and surrounding yourself with these amazing talents and continuing to bring these big dreams to fruition for us here in the community. And yeah, it's a damn fun project to be a part of. And granted, we're watching from the sidelines. It's got to be more exciting for you, just, consistently throwing this kindling onto the burning fire that is Splinterlands. And, I think we have all got aspirations for that fire growing into a massive bonfire of Splinterlands. And, it's ideas like you expanded on today that are going to get us there. So I on behalf of both of us here at the People's Guild and the community at large, thank you for your commitment to creativity, to this company, to the community, and for all that you do for bringing this game to life and breathing air into the stories, man.
Oh, and thank you. I mean, you said I think you mentioned the words watching from the sidelines, but I don't see that at all. We're literally in the midst of a podcast, which to me speaks volumes for you gentlemen, particularly since the community at large is really looking forward to a new onboarding experience, a new player experience, something that takes new players by the hand and turns them into veterans, and then builds relationships going forward, and everyone, whether you're a new player or old player, understands what's what within the ecosystem. And I think that in my head, it's someone who doesn't know anything about Splinterlands onboards, becomes a new player, becomes a pro veteran, more than a casual gamer, becomes a hardcore player, but then makes that advance, reaches the next level, unlocks the next achievement, which is basically becoming an evangelist for what this is. And that's what you guys have become. You kind of like made this transition all the way from brand new to casual to hardcore, to now you are evangelizing what Splinterlands is, what it means, its vision, how it empowers people. And something I love about our game is that it has somehow given birth to this passionate community of people that have all turned into product evangelists who take to Twitter, who take to social media, who write out hive blows, who live stream on YouTube and do a wide number of things to just like shout from the rooftops how awesome this is, knowing full well that it's kind of like we're all rising each other up. At Splinterfest we said Vonok, it's together we rise, and it's not just a war cry from within the Splinterlands. It's a war cry that we could shout in real life, because that's essentially what we're doing together as a community, not just as a small company, but as the entire community. Together, we're rising this vision for what gaming should be and empowering asset ownership and all the rest. It's just amazing to see. So, I think that is as much a part of our success as anything else. You got the technology, you got the the creative aspects, you got everything in between, but just as powerful is the rocket fuel, and that rocket fuel to me is the community. It's by far like no one can contest that. So yeah, I'm blown away. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to listening to more of your podcasts.
Man, that's great. Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, very kind words, man. And yeah, honestly, man, I've just loved it today. I've been riveted from the first moment we kind of started speaking. You've got, so many interesting stories. You speak with so much passion about the game, man. And, if anyone's listening to this, they're just going to be really excited about the future and what's coming. But yeah, I just love, for example, that story about the encyclopedia about how this game has pretty much been born from the community. So it's just great to hear, man. Okay, for all of you out there, you have been listening to
The People's Guild.